We're kicking off scintillating Sunday with 6 matches with Bozzzton versus Casie first up. And for Casie, he picked up a win earlier this week. He's looking in fantastic form. Got the nod from RDU yesterday about the genius deck building that their practice group is able to exhibit, which I have heard is largely in part to Casie.
Yep.
Bunny Hopper's playing on later today as well. And so for this first match here for Bozzzton, this is a pretty critical win for him because he mentioned in his last interview about playoff standings and relegations where he was still worried that the disaster scenario would come up if he had lost his previous match. He could still technically get into a relegation spot. I think he's fought that off quite handedly, seeming a lot better, so I'm looking forward to seeing him play this match.
That's what's pretty interesting about this season is the fact that players could be looking at either A, qualifying for playoffs or relegation within like the last week of games.
Yeah, it's tight standings.
It's tough, and it's tight.
You got 14 matches to set yourself aside.
Yeah.
That's it.
We're at the spot now where they have 2 to 3 matches to set themselves aside.
Yeah. Kicking things off here with Druid for Casie, Quest Druid that is, and against the Quest Shaman from Bozzzton. Covering the pick and ban phase real quick. It's Protect Shield phase Conquest. Why do I keep saying it wrong? Bozzzton had shielded his Shaman, so it was ineligible for a ban. Casie had done the same to his Druid. As a result, Bozzzton has had his Warrior banned away in the set. And I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm totally wrong. Forgive me. Bozzzton protected Shaman. Priest is banned away. Casie protected his Priest. His Shaman is banned away. That was the whole dynamic I was talking about. I thought about this for like 20 minutes before we came on air. I was going to talk about how Bozzzton is like taking after the Bunny Hopper approach here, where he's had this respect for Shaman now. He's shown some strong prowess on the deck and is a big believer in it as a result of it.
One thing I want to point out is that, first off, you're not a fan of former champ, correct?
No.
You're not a fan of it. Okay. You had to think about it, but backstage, Admirable says former champ is terrible. Anyways, it's really good in the Quest Druid matchup. As Quest Shaman versus Quest Druid, it's specifically in the deck for this. So maybe overall, if you're playing on ladder, former champ, maybe not the bring, but I think it might be pretty impactful in this one.
I do concede that against Druid, it is quite a good card. Battlecry Shaman is a deck where all of your cards are trying to do some sort of utility effect and to have some dynamic impact when you double Battlecry. Most matchups I have found, like 5 mana, 5/5, not exactly what I'm looking for. But against Druid specifically, having a lot of stats in play for one card is almost exactly what I'm looking for. So in tournament play, I do think it is quite core as it has such impact on the matchup. But I agree with you. Like in ladder play, for instance, how many Druids are you really facing? Not that many.
It's mostly Priest.
Yeah, an aggro warrior.
Yeah.
I run into so many aggro warriors.
I ran into a Zephyrus Highlander aggro warrior yesterday, and it was not a fun experience. I lost brutally.
Bozzzton with a unspectacular looking turn 3.
It's unspectacular, but at the same time, it's really not that bad, right? He can always just coin out the Bog Slosher on this Ethereal Lackey. Next turn, set up for like a Mind Control tech plus a 3/3 Ethereal Lackey.
I hope you like my invention.
Or just...
I kind of want to make quest progress, but I'm just not sure what to do. You know, Mind Control tech is one of those cards where I do often feel like I want to save it, but that saving it costs me something when I do.
One important thing about Mind Control tech in this matchup is that if you save it, stuff like King Feoris just becomes a lot weaker. Remember that Mind Control tech has a double Battlecry and Quest Shaman, so if they summon 6 or 7 minions and you go Hero Power Mind Control tech, suddenly you're looking at 5 mana, kill 2 of your stuff, make 2 of my stuff, summon a 3/3, and Quest Druid loses to that.
Yeah. I mean, you could have said take 2 of their stuff. That's kind of, that's how it works. I like how you wanted to break it down.
But it kills it, and then you summon it.
Yeah, it takes it.
I just want to point that out. It's like double assassinate, double summon.
Why use more word when fewer word do trick?
Because I want to highlight it for the players and analyze why it's so good.
Come dance.
It's hard to do that with like 5-word sentences. I don't know, man. Boston's looking at a pretty good spot. Yes, this Oasis Surger is going to come down. But I don't really think that's like a huge issue for Bozzzton here. Casie still needs to find Nourish. That's going to be crucial for him to advance his game plan. Doesn't have it in hand just yet. This is going to be like the first question mark for Bozzzton on if he can answer this, and I think he can.
Paramogus. Nothing to do with him, though. I guess if you can check these Oasis Surges, you can just get him in play. That works. This is always, to me, as Quest Shaman, the spot where I feel the most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is where I just don't have, like, definition. And so that Kobold Lackey right there, I think, is pretty key. That adds some definition to where he wants to go.
That feels pretty good, for sure.
So now I'm thinking Bog Slosher is looking much more appealing.
Would you Bog Slosher the 2-1 here and just Kobold Lackey the 5-2?
I kind of want to play the Kobold Lackey and Slosher the Lackey. There's a Wasp in hand.
Bozzzton has a lot of cards in hand, but one of the things about it is that it's pretty dead without Lackey generators.
You could run out real quick.
So I think protecting the 2-1 here is probably more important than just being able to fight the 5-4 later.
Definitely don't mind that. It makes some sense.
Bozzzton's thinking about it.
The problem is Bozzzton doesn't know if Nourish is on the other side or not, right? Like, if Nourish is on the other side, I think you're probably going to have to rely a little bit more on your draw potential and fight very aggressively for
That's
board.
a Nourish.
And so I think that's why Boston's going for the Kobold here. Is A, it's fighting for board pretty hard, but then B, if Casey's got the goods to back this up, you're going to need to be able to fight.
I want to interrupt you really quickly because Casie actually still has an option here even past the Nourish. Hitting Oasis is just good tempo, and I'm not surprised to see him deviate away from just playing Nourish here because
so strong. I mean, this was effectively like a
6-10.
6-10, yeah. And so you take a look at that, and you see how this turn works out for Bozzzton. Hero power plus the Lackey, coin Wasp. You actually get to kill the board.
Yeah.
I think it was wise to go for the tempo plan instead of going for a value plan here. I think he needed
in the short
strong.
term. It seems correct, but games aren't always decided by short term. You know, Boston's losing the value now, and because Casie has the Nourish to back this up, I think that not having Lackeys in his hand right now is going to come back to bite him. Casie is pretty much the best turn 7 he could possibly ask for with just a stealth floaty.
Starfall Lodi. Like, he hasn't played Elise.
It's not something Quest Shaman can answer. Lodi is like the one thorn in its side for most of the game.
Oh, this is brutal. It feels like almost every minion in Quest Shaman is like at the 3 health mark, where you're like, Starfall, I'm gonna. Oh, Lodi. Oh no.
There's no combination of plays Bozzzton can make right now that feels good against a Starfall.
Seriously, like nothing here feels like it's getting the job done.
And you can't pass. If you pass, your opponent, you literally just spent your turn 7 doing nothing.
I mean, they're going into 10 mana. Like, they just drew 3 cards.
How do you beat?
You got to prompt them.
You really got to play your stuff, yeah.
So the goal for Bozzzton is to find a line where if you get Starfalled, you can still fight back. If he can't find any viable lines against that, he will ignore Starfall, I believe.
That means to me, Evil Totem should come down.
There's little time.
Well, Evil Totem to me means Evil Totem should come down usually, but I get what you're saying.
Of course it's the right way.
Just a half measure here. Not exposing himself too hard to a Starfall. It's still pretty darn bad.
It's going to hurt no matter what.
Yeah. Oh, goodness, Flute picked up. A third Lodi.
I don't even know if you want the third Lodi.
All of these options are cards you put in your deck. This is hard.
Well, when in doubt, take the bigger. Yeah, Boston's in trouble. Casie exposes a Lodi.
I think that is a lot less of a concern once you already have a second Lodi in play.
Yeah, also you have the board.
Just hit him in the face.
Yeah.
Casie does pick up a mutate here for his Mogu Flesh Shaper. The only problem is that...
Just don't really have attack targets.
Yeah. Can't really do much.
Oh my. Casie has got gas for days. And it's Battle Frog time. But that's 5 minions in play.
That being said, Bozzzton is going to have potentially a really sweet comeback here with Mind Control Tech, double Battle Cry plus double Mogu, and a Mutate.
Yeah, this could be trouble.
This and a Sandstorm Elemental.
I'm looking at 2 steals in particular, the big ones.
A 6/8 here. No.
Takes a frog, it takes a
Oh,
4/4.
that is the worst pull.
All right, so now
He can still do everything.
Gotta keep fighting.
He can still play Mogu, Sandstorm, Mutate.
So step 1, Mogu and Mutate.
Mortals are so squishy.
Nothing to attack with it. Maybe you sack the first one, actually?
Yeah, the first one almost always goes in here, right?
So you're attacking 6/8?
You can clear off... One Mogu is not going to be attacking. So you could trade off a Mogu, play a Mogu, and then mutate it.
Yeah, and then you have enough to bump the 2 remaining top minions in Sandstorm.
You won't be able to kill the Cenarius,
No, Star is going to be 5/6.
but you're in a decent-ish spot. Not amazing, but decent-ish. And having Shudderwalk as your last card is about as good as your hand could possibly be with 1 card in hand. So, clear off the board.
Yep, do what
as
you
much
can.
as possible.
I think this was kind of good recognition from Casie, though, knowing that even in the face of Mind Control Tech, he had ways to fight back.
Well, what does a swipe do? Because you can push a lot of damage here. You could also just play a Cenarius.
I like the swipe.
I like the swipe, but Bozzzton has the card to fight back from here.
Only at 6, though. All right. No
you
option.
rip it. Yeah.
And no lackeys coming down.
What does it even... Does it...
Has to faceless a taunt.
Jaws that bite, my claws.
A good taunt at that. Pretty sure he's just dead.
I can't think of one off the top of my head. Basis Lackey here. Well,
Nope.
no.
Needed the Bog Slosher to happen first.
Oh,
Nope, it's only 2 of those in the pool.
there's a Sandstorm Elemental, so it gets it down
It's
to
only
1.
1.
Oh, no.
A day late and $1 short.
So close.
Who dares defy this ancient land?
But Casie did recognize, just push the damage when he could. Every single turn, even on the Wardrobe Lodi turn, he says, I don't need to protect this. I don't need this stealth. I already have a Lodi. I should just be pushing 4 damage face, and it paid off in spades.
I mean, damage matters.
I think that if Casie hadn't pushed that 4 there, Bozzzton could have easily stabilized.
Oh, I definitely think so.
So-
I mean, you look at how much the Shutterwalk just put back into hand. That alone, I think, is enough to, pretty securely stabilize yourself in the face of some pressure. Now, the issue would have still been, Casie has a pretty big hand from there, but you're looking at worlds of difference if that Lodi doesn't end up attacking.
Yeah, I think it was excellent recognition on when exactly he needed to go in. He said, this is the turn, paid out.
Yeah, just strong, aggressive play.
Yep.
This is the classic standard thing that you do. You get a minion in play, your opponent plays stuff. If they don't check your big minion, you blow up their stuff and attack them.
Yeah, it's like level 1, but it's actually level 5 because you have to think, oh, but if the Lodi is stealth and I get the spell power and he can't do it, and the Quest Shaman can answer unstealth minions but stealth, and he's just like, nah, just
And the Mind Control Tech, obviously
face.
it panned out pretty poorly for Bozzzton in that spot, but in the face of that, Casie had recognized that. Blow up their stuff, attack.
Yep.
It's a very simple plan that you have to execute sometimes. And a lot of times, because you're offered so many options, it feels like it's difficult to just do the simple thing.
I mean, a lot of times, too, it's just like a binary decision whether you do it or not do it, but there's so many different factors you have to consider, and you have to weigh them individually and then add them all up at the very end.
Yeah.
So it can seem simple between a yes or no option, but sometimes it's just a very difficult question to actually answer.
Yeah, indeed it is. And so game 1 is going to head over to Casie's side on that one. We got to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're jumping into game number 2 of Casie versus Bozzzton. Stay tuned. Both players need a win on their belt in order to secure themselves playoff spots. We'll find out what happens.
Legends say powerful treasures are hidden everywhere here in Aldum.
If we hope to defeat Rafam, we'll need as many as we can get. He's already unleashed the ancient plague lords and countless monsters. Keep them distracted, Reno.
Not a problem.
This plan is totally gonna work. Ain't that right, Finley?
Yes, I have them right where I want them.
There is an artifact here. The name is...
The scales of justice. Oh, it must be really fancy.
only to be used in a time of great peril. Yes, I think this qualifies.
Hey, look, Finley! You've lured one of the Plague Lords!
Take this, fiend.
In the face! Yeah! Hey, guys! Get that treasure! We've got a Plague Lord to destroy!
Yes, please, hurry.
Not to worry, Finley. We just push this thing right here.
No, that's a trap! Watch out!
It's all good. I am phonily tied.
Gracious me.
What we actually need to do is press this. And there. A fish.
No, it's the scales of justice.
Oh. Ah, who wants to use it first?
Oh, I do! Me! On second thought, maybe give it to Finley?
All you had to do was hold a rope.
Here we go, blaming the tall, ruggedly handsome guy again.
My name is Elias Sibelius and I go under Bozzzton. My username actually comes from my cat. His name is Bozzzton, so I just took that and made it a bit cooler with the triple Z. So yeah, shout out to him. When I got the confirmation that I was a Grandmaster, I was overwhelmed by emotions. Even though I haven't had the first place big tournament win, they actually appreciate that consistency and what I've been working for the last couple of years. I'm very good at focusing on a specific thing and keeping myself ready for the situation. Yeah, and mind games and stuff like that. My favorite memory is still my first DreamHack. I remember facing Super JJ. I was a total newcomer, so it was very big for me to just be there and just realizing that I could actually beat all these players, and it was very cool. My personal goals for this year is I want to qualify for the playoff. Of course, I want to go to the global finals. That's, I think, everyone's goal, but I want to be one of the best players. I will try my best to get there, for sure.
Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe. I'm Nathan, that's Admirable Zamora. I'm joined by America's Grandmaster, Edward Gallon Goodwin, who has a second match coming up today after casting.
Nalgadon. Yep.
Ooh, you got to cast 6 matches today.
A lot. And then my match is way later in the day, so I'm going to be
Get some rest.
beaten down by the time. But I'll come back strong,
Or by
hopefully.
Nalgadon, like last time.
Why do you have to mention that to me?
We're amidst Casie versus Bozzzton right now. Casie out to a 1-0 lead, able to take down Bozzzton's Shaman with Druid. And so now we're moving into game number 2, where Bozzzton's sticking with the Shaman deck, trying to get a win with it. And Casey's moving on to Priest, which we have talked about being a bad matchup a number of times, but we have not, in Europe, been seeing it go that way.
And a lot of the people on Shaman say it's really not that bad of a matchup as it seems. Bunny Hopper and Casie in particular think that Shaman is okay versus Priest.
And I think it is okay versus Priest.
I think it is okay versus Priest.
Just okay.
But okay isn't good.
Yeah, just okay is sometimes not okay.
When you say, oh, it's okay, it means I might have a 10% chance to win this game. Sometimes.
Yeah, that's usually when I say this is a disaster.
Speaking of disasters, Northshire Cleric being drawn for Casie.
Yep, and with the injured Tolvir Neferset Ritualist curve, You better believe that's where he's headed.
Now, one thing to keep in mind is Bozzzton does have Mogu Flesh Shaper, which I think is one of the crucial cards in this matchup. Mogu Flesh Shaper Mutate is a way to actually beat Priest at their own game, which is just overwhelming tempo early on. That being said, Bozzzton doesn't have the Mutate in hand, and he would also need to get a pretty good 8-drop to actually contest that.
Yeah, he's faced with a pretty difficult spot here early on, where it's like the argument of, do you want to try and get the right lackey to fight for this, or do you want to roll a totem and then look for a better opportunity?
I believe from Boston's side, there's several pretty good outcomes, and fighting for board is going to be how you win games versus Priest, so just playing a Sludge Slurper hoping for either a Rush Lackey or a Faceless makes sense here. It's not
true, but this is a critical moment.
It's a critical moment, and it doesn't always pan out.
You just accept it? You personally?
Yeah. That's a pretty good outcome. That's pretty good.
Not the way you're looking to play Questing Explorer, but you know what? You'll take it.
You'll take it. If I had to guess, I'd imagine the Rush Lackey is just the best there because you can immediately clear
Oh, yeah.
Danger Tolvier. That being said, though, Faceless Lackey lets you actually maybe play Mogu Flesh Shaper soon.
The Rush Lackey, I think, in my opinion, is absolutely the strongest one, looking at Weaponized Wasp in hand. Like, it's going to be contextual which one's the best, and Casey's already accounting for that. Notice he's clearing off the Lackey instead of the stronger 2-1 minion.
Otherwise, it would have gotten cleared.
It wouldn't have gotten cleared this turn. However, it would open him up to having to clear it next turn. And so rather than commit future attacks, he wants to commit this attack right now.
And it still plays around Sandstorm Elemental because that would only deal 1 damage, and 1 + 2 + 2 = 5, and that's not 6.
Excellent point, Gallon.
You're welcome.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
Figured I'd just help you out sometimes.
Thanks. Yeah, this is a lot of trouble for Bozzzton. This is pretty much one of the terrifying openers you face. Like, people talk about how bad Northshire Cleric is and stuff, but like when I'm playing Shaman, this is honestly one of the starts I fear more than the Northshire Cleric.
It's just huge amounts of tempo early on. Never set Ritualist plus Injured Tolvier after a value trade in the early game is like one of the strongest tempo plays you can make.
Like, Northshire offers opportunity, like with Circle of Healing and Wild Pyromancer stuff. They draw a lot of cards, but they end up with very little in play sometimes. Against the Neferset Ritualist Injured Tolvier opener, I feel like my entire board is just constantly chipped away.
It's also why Priest is so strong, is because it can actually answer sometimes what the other Priest will do. Like in the mirror match, a 2/6, you could just topsy-turvy and trade in.
Just a strong amount of value. It's a different amount of value. Instead of getting those cards in hand, you get those cards in play. Yeah, Boston's look concerned, and rightfully so.
Circle of Healing is going to be probably not played this turn, but one of the best cards that Casie can pick up.
All right, so now the question for Bozzzton is, how badly do you need totems and how badly do you need tempo? Because with Mogu and with the questing, you can actually kill off the Tolvier this turn. This is kind of the spot I find myself in a lot of times too, is like I'm losing board, and I really just wish I had an active Wasp. Like, you look at that Faceless Lackey on turn 2, and I'm like 99% sure it's right. Like, you do need to battle for board.
Absolutely.
If that wasn't happening, Bozzzton would probably have no board instead, and Casie would have a massive lead.
Game would be over.
So you look at the difference like a Wasp brings, and like, yeah, you get to kill a Northshire Cleric here. Would Casie have even played it?
At the same time, I mean, Bozzzton hasn't really found any tools off the top to help him with this tempo game plan. He just found more 3-mana 3/3s.
So that beckons the next question of, are you killing off the 2/5 this turn, or are you looking to perhaps try to land a Mind Control tech? Do you just slosher back the Questing Explorer and try to draw a card from it?
Waiting has several benefits. Maybe just jamming a 3/3 here that is not a... It's not really like advancing the game state, but it's still just like putting stuff in play. I think Bozzzton really needs to find a good tool like Mutate to actually make use of this board. Now, like MC Tech, Mogu Flesh Shaper Mutate, for example.
I like his patience here, but it's going to hurt. He needs a big... Bozzzton just needs a big outcome, though. Like, Casey's drawn a ton of cards here. This is massively powerful. But with a good outcome, Bozzzton can still have a chance in this one. So for Casie, it's about, I think, playing a minion here is a huge misstep, and I think he's going to avoid that.
Specifically the 2/7.
Mind Control Tech is a disaster potential.
Mogu Flesh Shaper also could be a potential disaster with stuff like Casie the Rhino finding the second Mogu Flesh Shaper, or Walking Fountain just killing the 2/7 and the Cleric outright.
There are some nightmare outcomes, but that's 2-card combos. Don't give them the one possibility.
Yeah.
Single Mind Control Tech.
There's a bunch of different small percentages of playing this fourth minion punishing him.
Okay, so the
At the same
implications
time,
of this.
if you force out the MC Tech, that means that they will not have it in their hand anymore.
It's a true story. He does have Topsy in hand, so even if the 2/7 gets stolen, I think you have fight potential here, but I think this is the most dangerous scenario that Casie can find himself in. But you know what? 75% is 75%.
This is, I mean, there is a real world where Bozzzton wins this game with like a Mind Control Tech stealing the 2/7 and just Mogu Flesh Shapering down another minion. That being said, Casie still has a huge hand of stuff. Can probably capitalize on
Yeah, you just
whatever
fight back.
Bozzzton does tremendously.
You're going to have to fight through Mind Control Tech at some point. Like, you can't avoid it forever. And so for Casie, I want to clarify earlier. I said perhaps it'd be a misstep. That's wrong. That's not the right phrasing for that. That is the one point where he's vulnerable. It's not a criticism of the play. I think that he should be developing here, in fact. It's what the development can mean for him in that regard. Mind Control Tech, I think, looking at Bozzzton's hand, is the only way he can actually climb back into the game. And so I need to rephrase that better. That was very poor phrasing on my part.
MC Tech steals the 2/7.
And that's a disaster.
That is a disaster.
Again, this is why I wanted to clarify as I started realizing that as Bozzzton was going to be forced to play Mind Control Tech, it was not a criticism of Casey's play. I do think he needed to develop.
Yeah. At maximum, you're putting your opponent at a 25%er to win the game, which is very unlikely. And
There's still game left.
They have to play the MC Tech.
Still game left.
To even be in the game, they have a 25%. Secondly, they need to have an MC Tech in their hand. If you play 4 minions and they don't play an MC Tech, suddenly you could just develop your entire board, because why would you play around an MC Tech? They obviously don't have it. Even now, Casey's still in a totally fine spot. Bonsomdi is a bit dead in terms of what it's going to pick up, but it's still a 7/7 that he could just jam. He has Divine Topsy combo for later.
You could see how good the position would have been without that steal. Like, it would have been, like, pretty insane. Yeah, and Casie wants to clear off the Mogu Flesh Shaper to avoid a draw of Mutate or a Witchy Lackey on Bozzzton's side, and I think that's wise.
Just consistent with what he's been doing, yeah.
Avoid the disaster situation. That previous one, I think you had to get going with it because you had no damage in play.
That being said, a second Sandstorm Elemental here means Bozzzton would just reclaim the board. Bozzzton has one incredibly good draw in his deck right now, among others.
Yeah,
Second
I'm thinking of a number
Sandstorm
of good
Elemental
draws.
An
That's
MC
not one of them.
Tech.
Well, not one of them yet. I always need to... It's kind of the nature of that card, right?
You know what's really funny is that if this was a Maelstrom Portal instead of a Sandstorm Elemental, Spell Power Totem would just be demolishing here.
Yeah, but
What I'm trying to say is, Maelstrom Portal was a good card.
thanks, Callan.
In case anyone didn't know.
Thanks for the analysis.
Yeah, no worries.
There is little time.
Sandstorm Elemental and MC Tech kind of pull in different directions. You want minions to be in play so the MC Tech works, but if there's minions in play, that means you need to clear them off. Bozzzton just opts to play the... He opts to play his biggest thing, spends most of his mana.
I believe he traded here.
I do think so.
Okay, I think he should be making that sacrifice.
There's a Wild Pyromancer in play.
Yeah, not only that, but it's a big minion with a lot of health, and your opponents draw a lot of cards.
Yeah.
So it's more difficult for them to deliver punishing blows with Inner Fire if their minions are at lower health. It's just a matchup where you're largely playing a secondary game of am I dead this turn, and so you pretty much just try to avoid that.
And the answer is no. If you trade in, you're very much alive.
You're trying to make it no. And for Casie, he's very much trying to make it yes.
Casie might just be playing, I imagine, an Injured Blade Master here.
I think he's looking at this Divine Spirit with the way he's done this.
Oh, yes, because you need to play around specifically Sandstorm Elemental Hero Power. If you give them a 2 damage AoE, that was going to be ridiculously rough to deal with.
Ow.
You also play around MC Tech this way? You don't set up lethal just yet, but it's still a ton of damage.
No, it pretty much is, in Bozzzton's mind, it's setting up lethal.
Wow, this is scary.
Yeah, that's how 12-12 taunts usually work. You have 7 mana.
If you can see it from both players' perspectives, Hero Power former champ seems like the most onboard play. Well, maybe you can fight back from that, but from Bozzzton's perspective, he has to be so worried about stuff like extra arms, for example, or even a heal plus the second inner fire.
He's seen a Topsy.
He's seen an inner fire, but there's still a lot of cards that are in Casey's range here that kill him.
There's 2 cards actually just straight up kill him.
Yes.
That's it. The rest of the cards do not kill you, however, do they create insurmountable board positions? I think the answer is most likely yes.
Bozzzton does not have a Giggling Inventor in his deck. That would be one of the vital resources here, I would say.
It's a pretty critical card against Priest specifically. You get to this stage of the game, it's a way to defend yourself. You know, Priest lacking burst, I think, is the one real talking point you have of stabilization.
Yeah.
Is that their burst comes in the form of minions already in play.
1 life or 30 does not matter versus Priest if they do not have board for the rest of the
Once
game.
you've stabilized, like, that is very true. Like, it's so unique specifically to Priest, too. Against almost any other class, if you're at 1, they have ways to kill you from hand.
Job's done.
At the same time, I mean, this is what I call an insurmountable board as well.
I agree.
If you Witchwood Piper for a Sludge Slurper, you get an Ethereal Lackey, you play the Ethereal Lackey, you get an Earthshock, you can Earthshock the 12-14, clear off the 4-3, kill off the 2-6.
How can you kill off the 2/6?
You trade with your minions. The Earthshock.
Gotcha, I see. That's the only way to win.
uh,
All right, go for it.
Dance to my song.
That was guaranteed. You're always getting a Sludge Slurper here. 1 in 5.
1 in 6. 6 lackeys.
Cobalt Lackey does not do it. 1 in 6. Yes, I always forget that. I always forget Titanic Lackey was added to the game.
You're stuck in the old days, Gallon. You got to stop living in 82.
2082? 1982? It came out like several months ago.
Casie takes the game. Fights through the mind control tech. It's important to recognize when you have to play into that card.
Bozzzton had a couple interesting decisions, but I think what really happened was he did not get the pan-outs in terms of draws from his deck. He was looking at specifically Mutate. There was a turn where if he had double Sandstorm Elemental, for example, it would have been like incredibly good, and it just never came.
I mean, you're mentioning specific scenarios, though. I mean, that's what you have to fight with in Shaman versus Priest. You need specific tools to do specific jobs. So when they show up, you have game. When they don't, you find yourself struggling, just like that example.
You're going to have so many like 2-card combos where it's like if you draw this and this, it's good, but apart they're just 3/4s.
Yeah, it's just not the nature of how Quest Shaman wants to fight. Early pressure is often a way to deliver a punch versus that deck.
Yep. And I mean, we have Casey for the interview.
Yeah, Casie, can you hear us? Muted?
Hi, Casey.
Yes. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. You pick up a win here versus Bozzzton. Nothing like super fancy and pretty straightforward. However, game 1 looked pretty interesting to me. So talk to me about this series and some spots that you found particularly interesting.
I think the only real interesting thing was that pick and ban phase, and after that, where I picked scenarios. I could have picked Oasis Searcher of the Expedition, but Scenarios is like the single best card in the Shaman matchup, because it buffs your board and makes you push damage, or it's just 3 mediocre medium threats that doesn't really play into MC tech. But if you pick Oasis Searcher, you don't push damage, you play into MC tech. So I think this is like the biggest decision I had this year, is to pick Scenarios over Oasis Searcher.
Well, talk to me about the pick and ban phase. You mentioned that was kind of interesting to you.
We basically had a mirror match. He didn't protect his priest, so I banned it. And yeah, I don't know. I think priest is much better to pick than shaman, because shaman is slightly favored against druid. Priest is favored against shaman, druid, and it's the Priest mirror. I don't know. It makes no sense to me.
I agree. Pick Priest, play Priest, win some games of Hearthstone. I had one interesting spot. Maybe for you it was obvious, and looking back on it, it was very good. When do you decide to attack with War Druid Lodi? You had 2 Lodis in play, you had casted a swipe, and we often see a lot of players just hold back on a Lodi because having that extra spell power is just so important, but there you decided not to. Could we get your thoughts on that?
Like, the only way he removes it is by spending his whole turn, and if he removes it, he has like 4 power on board usually, and then I'm like, whatever. Then I just play a 4 Auras, I get MC tech, then I play more threats. The only way you lose as Druid against Shaman is when you play a big threat like 4 Auras while being behind, and the MC tech you and push face damage. But if you can't push damage to their face while developing threats and not being behind, you just win a lot of the time.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. I want to mention RDU had gave y'all a shout out for your genius deck building, is what he said, and he's referring pretty specifically to the inclusion of the Stormbringer inside the Shaman deck and how it was such a big catalyst to his win yesterday. My question is, who was responsible for that particular decision, or any of the decisions really that go into the deck building? Who's usually the one brainstorming that?
Like last week, I already wanted to play Stormbringer, and then we were like, nah, we are not going to. We won't play our Shaman because we're gonna face like the Boar Control and his group. We won't play Shaman against them. That's what we knew before. So let's just keep it for next week. Play Stormbringer because I expected to play the Mirror, and in the Mirror, if my Shaman doesn't get banned, it's insane. And then against Druid, it's also fine. Like, I was responsible this time for Stormbringer, and Bunny was responsible for playing Piper, so he just switched it around a little bit.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
And so, Casie, you got a couple matches left now. You have 2 left on deck, and I'm looking forward to seeing you play. You can almost secure yourself a playoff spot with the 2-0 next week, and I'm hoping to see it happen, brother, because you've been playing lights out.
Thanks. I'm trying my best.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. Casie, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on your win, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
He's been playing good.
Yes.
Something that I've most liked about seeing Casey's play is A, the rapid pace play, but B, that you can see him making strong decisions in that rapid pace play, which all tells you that he got to that point by practicing and by perfecting what he wants to do outside of the game, so that when he steps into competition, it's not a thought for him, it's not nerves, it's nothing else. He doesn't feel that pressure of playing because he's already done that hard work.
It doesn't seem like he's playing under any stress. You know, he's just making confident, quick decisions. Like you said, practice makes perfect.
Decisiveness is key.